Imagine being drop-dead gorgeous, a Hollywood star, and secretly creating an invention that will later on change humanity forever. Welcome back to Heels of Her Story, and today we have Hedy Lamarr. She was born Hedwig Kiesler, and she was born in Vienna in the year 1914. She was a very smart young girl that at the same time she had this very interesting, breathtaking beauty. From a very young age, she will be very curious about the functioning of certain things. What is it that makes certain objects work? How do they function? And how can I, kind of break them apart to rebuild them again, to understand what parts are inside of it and how it works. So she was a very curious child from a very young age, which is a sign of being smart or being a genius. Like every single genius that we study in history, they all have this like thing or characteristic, like they're all very curious. So she was a very curious child, but at the age of only 17 years old, she moves to Berlin, Germany. And after this, by the age of 18, her career as an actress started. She made a movie called Ecstasy. And this movie was very controversial because remember, this is the 1930s, and at the time, everything was super conservative and very, very conservative. And she had a scene where she made an orgasm in that scene. So obviously this was a total scandal at the time because this is something that was not common or normal. So this was a scandal that will later on haunt her. After this film, of course, she became super famous, and this will lead her to meet her first husband. Her first husband was called Franz Mendel. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, I guess. And he was a businessman, very rich. He used to be a manufacturer of guns or arms, and he was very wealthy. And at the same time, he was much older than her. He was 33 years old and she was only 19. And her family opposed to this relationship mainly because he, within his businesses, he was not only making businesses with, powerful people in general, but to some people that were associated with the Nazis themselves. And Hedy Lamarr was Jewish and her family was Jewish as well. So imagine the scandal that they was creating, right? So at the time, a lot of people were not 100% aware of how bad Hitler was because this is like the beginning of everything. However, a lot of Jewish people and people with common sense, let's say, will realize that his anti-Semitism was absolutely extreme, in that he was a very dangerous person. But at the time, a lot of people didn't really know. So one of the people that he was doing business with was actually her husband at the time. This marriage did not last very long because their relationship between them two became more and more toxic for the fact that he was very controlling. He used to look down on her for the fact that she used to have this film that made her famous, where she, had the scene with the orgasm. So this is something that he really, really did not like. And he used to look down on her for her doing that. And in a sense that he even tried to, make the film disappear and that nobody else will be able to sell it. So she will feel like she was trapped in this relationship because not only he was very controlling and wouldn't let her leave the house much, but also he didn't like the fact that she, was into acting and he didn't want her to act. So she couldn't act no more during this relationship. So eventually the toxicity and the control are way too much, and she decides that she's going to escape. And she plans this escape from the house by basically drugging her maid and making her sleep so that she could dress up as a maid and people would not recognize her and, just take a bicycle and just escape all the way from there to London. It's pretty crazy, but to be honest, this just shows her strength and how determined she was to not stay in a situation that she didn't really like. It's pretty extreme way to live, but if she had to go to that conclusion, I can't not even imagine how bad the situation was that she felt that she couldn't have a regular divorce or breakup, but she had to go to the extreme of escaping in this way. But anyway, she escapes and she has some jewels with her so that she could, survive, having some resources. And eventually she meets in London the man who's gonna take her to Hollywood. So she meets the MGM boss. His name was Louis B. Mayer, and he sees her, and of course she's very beautiful, so that's definitely an advantage. And of course she has this film that was very controversial but also very popular, so that's something that played on her favor. But she was a very smart woman, because I've heard that at first they were able to set up a deal where they will pay her, I think it was around $100 per week, and she's able to basically, dress up and get pretty and negotiate the salary that she's going to have from like 100 to 500. So this was a very smart and strategic woman. But later on in her life, she continues to make films. And fun fact, this is the part where she changes her name from Hedwig Kiesler to Hedy Lamarr. And during her career, she has a couple of hits. First, she has Algiers, and then she has Boomtown with Clark Gable. And eventually she has Samson and Delilah, which was like a big film at the time. I think the only film that was doing better than that around that time was Gone with the Wind. So imagine how big that was. And mind you, while this entire Hollywood life was like at the peak, she was a secret genius the entire time. She used to have like small labs like in her truck where she used to have time to like, do scientific things and experiments and all that. And one of the things that she actually did was like a small pill of Coca-Cola. Like she basically grabbed a Coca-Cola and she was able to compress that into a little pill, and then you could just put that into, I guess, water, and that will become Coca-Cola, stuff like that. She was a very, very smart lady the entire time, but she felt like acting was the only thing that she, was able to make an actual living with. And remember, I don't know if you've watched other videos in the channel, but we talked about this before. Back in the day, Hollywood contracts were not really what they are today. Today, people have more freedom, and, actors don't have to stay married to a certain character and continue to do that with a production or a company. But back in the day, you used to have these contracts where it used to be like 7-10 years. You have to make all these movies that we want, and you have to do what we tell you. And it used to be very controlling and exhausting, I imagine. So she will feel like that life was something that was not fulfilling her. And I totally get that, to be honest. Her love life was a total chaos. But at the same time, because spoiler, she has like 6 husbands. But to be honest, I think it shows that she's a very persistent person, I would say. Because, she escaped from that husband in a bicycle by dressing up like her maid and all that. And then after that, she has a second husband called Jean Markey, and he was a screenwriter, and they got married in the year 1939, but they only lasted 2 years. And it's very crazy because during their marriage, they adopted a baby, right? And okay, just imagine like, oh yeah, we're gonna adopt a child. This is so cute. We're a beautiful family. Turns out that this baby was actually her biological baby that she will have with this man that will eventually be her third husband, called John Loder. Like, imagine that. And I have so many questions. Like, I wonder how did she fake the pregnancy? Like, where did she go? Where did she hide herself, to have the baby? And then who was having the baby at the time to, hide the baby from her husband? And then to take it, I mean, I have so many questions, but okay, this just shows that she was a very smart woman to do all that, because I cannot even figure out the logistics. But anyway.
John Loder.
Then her third husband, John Loder, which is the one that we are just saying that had a baby with her before, they had an additional 2 babies. And this was the marriage that gave her the family that she wanted, let's say. So they had James, which is the oldest baby that she pretended to adopt with the previous husband. And then they had Anthony and Denise. And this, was the family that she always wanted. But unfortunately, it wasn't good enough, because eventually they will end up getting divorced. And she will send her oldest son, James, the one that, the whole adoption thing happened with. And they will have a very complicated relationship. She will send him to this school where he will be very unhappy. And I mean, it was a complicated motherhood in general. And I feel like this happens a lot in Hollywood. I mean, these people have this crazy lives. A lot of times they're surrounded with a lot of, toxicity and, difficult things. So, of course, motherhood was complicated, but wow. But not only she was smart enough to deal with all this logistics of bringing her son from a different man and adopting it into this marriage, but she was also smart enough to come up with the frequency hopping invention that will create the technology foundation to later on invent Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS. But how did she do this, you might be wondering? Well, remember her first husband that used to be this manufacturer of arms and all of these military technologies? Well, during this marriage, she was in too many secret conversations talking about this war technology and stuff, right? So she understood well that radio-guided torpedoes were a big problem because they will have let's say, a stable frequency, and this will mean that the enemy could jam into their conversations and see exactly what they were doing. And this is something that Americans were actually struggling with during the war, because the Nazis were being able to hop into or jump into their conversations and listen to what's going on, and eventually this strategy that they were doing will fall apart. So Hedy thought, what if, instead of a one stable frequency that the enemy could just jump into and listen to, what if this frequency was a random or aleatory frequency that you could not 100% track or reach, to 100%. This will be able to make it possible for the enemy not to jam all of them at once, and the torpedo will still reach its target. Eventually, she will be able to collaborate with George Antheil, and they will come up with the invention, and of course they will have some help from different people. By the year of 1942, on August 11, they officially got the pattern for this invention. And at first, the Navy at the time told them that this is something that they didn't want it because they felt like it wasn't really gonna work. And during the World War II, they didn't use this at all. But later on, years later, they used this information to develop the technologies that eventually will lead to the creation of modern Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS. So this invention of her was basically the foundation for all of it. So after all this, she will eventually marry her third husband, John Loder, which was a British actor that she will have another 2 kids with. Remember, they already had a baby that she pretended to adopt with her previous husband. The name of this baby is James. And then they will have another 2 babies. They will have Anthony, and they will also have Denise. And this was a very beautiful family. She said that this is something that she always wanted to accomplish, this beautiful family, but it wasn't good enough because eventually they will also get divorced. And then she will have a 4th marriage with the musician Tody Stuffer, and they will only last for like a year or a few months. And then her 5th husband, W. Howard Lee, was her longest marriage, but still ended. And the divorce with this husband was pretty crazy because at the time that they were getting divorced, one of her kids was very sick and she was trying to take care of this kid, and they had to, show up on court and stuff. And instead of her going to court herself, she decided to send one of her doubles from Hollywood, one of the actresses that will do her doubles. And obviously, eventually, the judge realized like, hey, you're not really her. And this ended up costing her a lot of money and obviously losing a lot during this divorce. And then she will have her last husband, which was Louis J. Boyce. And he was actually one of her divorce lawyers before. So this was also a very short marriage. So her personal life or her marriages were very unstable for the most part. But I think we can take a lot from number 1, how smart she was, and number 2, her ability to be so smart and curious and creative. I think that is something that every time you study the life of a genius, they always are very curious. So I think curiosity is something that we always have to advocate for, number 1. And number 2, I think just her and a lot of these beautiful actresses of all Hollywood, they all have in common that even though society tried to define them by their looks and their beauty and their talent as an actress, and oh yes, you're just a pretty face, in reality, they were like, no, I'm way more than that. And I actually will continue to, flourish those areas of myself where I'm actually passionate about and that actually require some actual brain work, you know what I mean? So I think regardless of what it is that what you're doing, or regardless of what your passions are, remember that eventually your beauty, your looks are gonna go away one day, and the only thing they're gonna have for you is whatever you got up here. So make sure that, yes, take care of your physical appearance and use it as much as you can to get to whatever it is that you need to get to. However, remember that that thing that is going to last is your education, your ideas. That's the one thing that nobody can take away from you. Hedy Lamarr will eventually die at the age of 85 years old in the year 2000. Kind of forgotten by everybody, but her, last years were very controversial. She had a lot of plastic surgery, and also she was involved in a lot of cases of her like stealing things, like very small things. Probably she had some mental disorders. Some people say that she actually had a doctor that was giving her meth, allegedly, instead of actual medication that she will need. So she had a very, very, very rough last years. But again, moral of the story, always make sure you cultivate your knowledge and make sure that if you have an idea, just give it a try. You try to develop it. There's always a way to bring your ideas and your creativity into reality. I'm sure when she came up with the idea of this whole hoping frequency and blah, 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 I'm pretty sure a lot of people were like, what are you talking about? That's so weird. I don't understand or whatever. But she still pushed it, and here we are with Wi-Fi. Because that idea was the foundation for, everything that we're using right now and how you're being able to watch this video today. So if you have an idea, make sure you give it a try. Who knows? It might be a genius idea. Thank you so much for listening to this video. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Remember, if you have any other person that you would like me to speak to, this is all about women in history. So let me know her name and I'll be more than happy to make a video about her. And see you on the next video. Mwah. I love you so much. Bye-bye.